actually, since the authority of the military rulers is under question. In that, of course, what they're saying, and since people, they say, have not been consulted about that law. Now, are there serious questions emerging about the legitimacy of Egypt's military rulers and, therefore, the rules and the laws that they put forth?
Well, obviously, there are very serious concerns about the electoral law that has been drafted and put forward and is being implemented by the Supreme Military Council under the leadership of Field Marshal General Tantawi. From what we understand, there were about 60 organizations today that had supported the demonstrations that took place in Tahrir Square. There were thousands of people involved in these demonstrations, and the organizations feel very strongly that the provisions for 1/3 of the parliamentary seats being designated for, quote, independent, unquote, candidates is a mechanism for the re-entry into Egyptian political life of the National Democratic Party leadership and operatives.
Right.
That party had dominated Egyptian politics for over 3 decades, and of course Mubarak, who is still now under a lot of scrutiny by the people inside of Egypt. Many people feel that his party will utilize that 1/3 set aside to re-enter Egyptian politics and in a way dominate the future of Egyptian politics, because we have to understand that the military was a key component of the Mubarak regime. He came out of the military, the military structures there.
Yeah, if I could just stop you, because I'm just getting information that Mr. Yahya Ghanem, he's the associate editor of the Al-Ahram newspaper, is joining us now from Cairo. And let's put this question to him as well. Mr. Ghanem, is this new amended law, in terms of the revolutionaries weakening their revolutionary, so to speak, parliament, is it weakening that? And is it allowing Mubarak supporters to enter parliament? What's your view on that?
Well, I believe that the military council response to the demands of the public to change the electoral law was actually partial and was not up to what most of the people wanted, and in my estimation, there's no reasonable reason for that. I guess that's the least the council can do. But in the meantime, there are some other demands that I personally I'm completely opposed to it, like the scrapping the emergency law, and especially that most of the public and even some of the so-called elite they mix up the two things, the emergency law and the emergency state. I guess they are not right when they call for scrapping the emergency law, because it exists even in all democracies. So I'm fully supportive of the public in their demand in changing the electoral law, but the rest of the demands, some of them, I do not agree upon.
Okay, Mr. Moustafa, let's have your view on that as well, the issue of the emergency law. Now, the state of emergency law protesters were telling us that it's legally expired, but the military rulers have announced that it will stay in place until next year. So how legitimate is that when we speak of the emergency law still being in place, and what do you think about that demand?
Certainly, the emergency law is legitimate and is not needed unnecessarily, and we got to get rid of it, because the rule of law can take care of any disturbance of anybody who trying to subvert the country, the people. I think it's possible to do that. What is amazing, because we have complained as Egyptians abroad about the constitution, which was drawn mainly by Muslim Brotherhood elements, which eventually excluded 10 million Egyptians, including someone like myself, because we may be holding a second passport, like British passport or Iranian passport or whatsoever. And that has made it difficult. Even there's no mechanism how we're going to participate in elections or voting or fielding candidates. So it is quite a big mix. That's why I am in the view that everything should be put on hold to build institutions first, to build the trust. There's a capacity building needed in the country, and then go into elections after 3 to 4 years in the Polish model of 1985, when the generals took over and were able to pass over power to Solidarity in free and fair elections. Because now what you're going to have is maybe free elections, but certainly not fair.
Okay, Mr. Azikiwe, let's have your take on that. Do you think there is a strong need now for this revolution, this second wave of revolutionary movement? The people are saying they want to reclaim the spirit of the revolution. Do you think that people are becoming a bit too hasty maybe about this, and that they should rather stop right now and let the process move forward? Or do you think it's rather necessary at this point in time to keep up the pressure to at least do something that, as our guest in London was saying, to make that upcoming elections more fairer than it could be without these pressures?
I believe that it is essential that the people inside of Egypt who actually organized and led the revolutionary movement that brought about the resignation of Hosni Mubarak, that they maintain their vigilance. If they do not maintain their vigilance, it appears as if the military and people from the previous government will attempt to dominate the entire political process. We also have to keep in mind the role of the United States in this whole process. There was a meeting recently between the foreign minister of Egypt and Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State of the U.S., and they are attempting, that is Washington, in a sense to micromanage the whole political transition process. They want to maintain a very close relationship with the Egyptian military, as well as any government that may come to power in Egypt. And the Supreme Military Council is under extreme pressure from the United States to try to maintain some type of political stability inside of Egypt. And we also have to look at the role of the State of Israel as well. Now, we know that there was reports recently that indicated that the Israeli government may want to move military forces back into the Sinai in response to a number of attacks that have taken place on the gas pipelines that supply natural gas from Egypt to Israel. And of course, this is a major concern as well, both to the revolutionaries inside of Egypt as well as the United States. They want to maintain some stability there because they realize there's a lot at stake in regard to the political future of Egypt vis-a-vis the role of the United States in North Africa and throughout the Middle East. So I think there's a number of issues that have to be resolved.
Yeah, okay, some interesting points raised there, Mr. Azikiwe. I'd like to go back to Cairo now. Mr. Ghanem, let's speak about the questions that are being raised against the military rulers. We have, apart from the emergency law issue, the military rulers saying that they will remain in power until 2012, that they haven't given a specific timetable, as was requested by a lot of political parties, to transfer power to a civilian government, and also the fact that there are claims that they're prolonging the trial of even Mubarak and his sons, or trying to influence that case, and of course the ties that are being referred to here with the US and the business interests there. So what are you saying about these kinds of claims, and do you think there is a danger actually for the military trying to maintain control, even if it's from behind the scenes?
Well, let me start by saying that I have a strong reservation as far as this thing that your honorable guest raised about the need to scrap the emergency law. All democracies, they have emergency laws, and either by the name of emergency law or different names. I mean, when a natural disaster takes place anywhere in the world, an emergency state is declared, and I mean, there is a real need for emergency law, either for man-made disasters or natural disasters. So, but what we're talking about here is emergency state of emergency. So let's differentiate between the two things. As for your question about the danger of the military council ruling from behind the scene, of course, it's very dangerous. But what I can say is that the crux of the problem lies in the military council failure to come up with a roadmap, both economic and political. I believe what most of the public need in Egypt is a roadmap, both economic and even economic before the political. I can give you examples of such failure. The council and the government, both the council and the government, have been talking for the last 6 months about the ceiling, putting a ceiling of the income for the government employees. Let me put out or explain how serious this issue is for the most of the public. I mean, we've got at least 10,000 employees and officers, both in the army and the police. Their monthly salary, the average is £1,000,000 Egyptian a month. Now, then we're talking about a billion, 120 billion Egyptian pounds every year, at the time when the government is seeking to take loans from the IMF, 2 billion, and striving for even more from different parties. So I guess that the public has the right, all the right, to be grudgy and to be angry over the government and the council for failing to draw up a roadmap, both economic and political. I guess this is the crux of the matter.
Mr. Ghanem, yeah, and let's put this to our London guest. Mr. Moustafa, do you think, as was implied there, that there has been rather a failure by the military council to come up with that roadmap? But however, is this something that they've done deliberately or not? Is there a deliberate attempt to prolong the trial of Mubarak? Is there a deliberate attempt in not giving a specific timetable, in not outlining a specific roadmap? Do you agree with this claim by the opponents of the military rulers that they are actually looking for control?
I don't think they deliberately trying to undermine the revolution, and that is the feeling I have got through 2 visits to Cairo. One of them official visit with some MPs from London. What I feel, they certainly failed to present a clear timetable of reform, and that is what worries me. And that's what I say, the army should come out clean and say they need a period, which I think it needs 3 to 4 years to have a country with proper institutions. Egypt has been dismantled from an institutional point of view. There's no institutions. Even religion has been hijacked since Nasser, Sadat, Mubarak. They control everything, even middle-level management they controlled in Egypt. Banking system, you could say any political process in Egypt is controlled by the regime over the last 6 years. And these things are not going to change over 6 months. You got about 3,000 people being removed from power. There's a huge vacuum, and this could be filled by Islamists. That's what I think. It's not a military coup what the generals have done. As I say, they failed in necessarily situation where the state failed, where the state collapsed. It's different than military coup, which come and collapse a state to create a new system. And from here, it's a very positive, and it can be very good if it's utilized properly. Okay. The United States of America position, as you have indicated earlier, is very important and cannot be sidetracked or marginalized. The United States wants to see the army in the background and control in some form of a Turkish model. And I don't want to mislead people. Turkish model has been developing for 80 or 90 years. So it's not 5 or 6 months, nor the generals in Turkey are the generals of Egypt. But it is, you have to start at a point, and I think we got the point now by having senior military figures in the lead of Egypt, which can make a reasonable balance as the
Okay,
situation
Mr.
as it
Moustafa,
is,
what
as
you're
Egypt can
saying-
be divided.
What you're saying is that 6 months is not enough time to make that handover of power, to make the transition process. However, 6 months was what the military rulers promised to the people who are now in the streets. Mr. Azikiwe, let's put this question to you. They're on the streets and they're saying, okay, it's over 6 months now. Why is the transition process still not happening? Why are we seeing more and more control from the military rulers? Why are we seeing these restrictions in the media, etc.? Do you think that even if a 3 to 4 year period is required, as I guess Nanda was saying, this is something, do you think, that the people would accept? Or is this going to lead to a confrontation similar to the revolution against Hosni Mubarak?
I do not believe that the people will accept an extended transitional process in regard to the politics in Egypt. The real democratic issues, and this is very, very important for people to understand, that even here in the United States, even though we purportedly have a democratic system, the issues involving war and peace, the economy, the mass media, largely are not determined through a democratic process. The majority of the people here in the United States oppose the Afghan and Iraq wars, but these wars have continued. The Afghan war next year is going to be 10 years, next month is going to be 10 years old. The mass media here in this country is largely controlled by a group of transnational corporations. So I think the people in Egypt, in looking at democracies in other parts of the world, even in the West, realize that the people inside Egypt have to be empowered to make basic, fundamental democratic decisions about the military, its role in society, how the economy is going to be structured in regard to rebuilding Egypt as a proud and independent and sovereign nation in North Africa and the Middle East, and also what role is the media going to play in this overall democratic transition. These are some very, very important questions, and that's why today it was announced that you have organizations here in the United States that are aligning themselves with organizations in Egypt. It's called the October 2011 Coalition, and they're going to be occupying Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. starting on October the 6th to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Afghan war. So these democratic issues are relevant to the revolution that's going on right now in Egypt.
Okay, we're running out of time. I'd like to put the last question to Mr. Ghanem in Cairo now, his remarks on this. Mr. Ghanem, are Egyptians now facing the reality that they cannot bring about the fundamental changes, at least, that they wanted to, at least in the near future, and they have a long way yet to go to see those changes realize?
Well, I guess time is running out right now on the show, but let me sum up what I felt from most of the public in the streets. I felt that they believe that, or they feel that if you don't believe in miracles, you're not a realist. They still believe that we can still make miracles, and I do still believe that we still can make miracles. We've done it before and we can do it, but let me appeal both to the main parties concerned, both the military council and the public. The military council has to be more sensitive to many of the public demands, and also the public has to be a little bit more patient and more insistent on having a clear, crystal clear roadmap, both economic and political, from the council.
Thank you very much. Associate Editor of the Al-Ahram newspaper, Mr. Yahya Ghanem, speaking to us there live from Cairo. Chairman of the Conservative Arab Network, Mr. Wafik Moustafa in London, and Editor of Pan-African News Wire, Abayomi Azikiwe in Detroit. A big thank you to you as well. Thank you so much, viewers, for staying with us on this edition of News Analysis. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but do stay with us. The international news coming up next.
our guys are honestly not afraid to die for Christ. If that means be alone, they'll be alone.
I see the rodeo as an opportunity to get exposure.
I do it for the money and for the excitement. You have to, I mean, that's what it's about, to come out and compete. That's what you want to do.
I became a drug addict. I became a crack addict.
They're soldiers. Every one of those guys walked across the stage this morning. I promise you. They'll go anywhere, anytime.